Hello all, good morning, good evening or good afternoon based on wherever you are. So today I was talking to a customer and we were talking about source code of the extension. I know there are a lot of debates about it and let's kind of talk about it briefly. Some partners feel like that the PDEs that they are building for their customer, the partners own the source code. Whereas some partner think like that if it is a PDE, that's a code which is owned by customer, not by the partners. I'm of the same belief that if you're writing a PDE, then the source code is owned by customer, and maybe it's coming from the old people who are coming from NAV. That if you are doing customizations, then the source code is a is owned by customer, not by the partner. But yes, if you are building an app source app, then surely you own the app. And while talking to one of the customer today, we were talking about what would be the best way that we provide access to your source code to you. And while doing that, I looked into my playlist and thought about it that I never talked about it. And this is one of the new features that was released in version 25. So let's see what has changed in extension management and how you can make sharing of source code easier for your customer if you are of that approach, if you think like I'm thinking. So before we move ahead, let's get into, let me open my Visual Studio Code and let me get into extension management here. Okay, so here's my extension management where I have one extension which is available on GitHub, and now you'll notice that there is a new field called source which is set to yes. For others the source is no, but only for my extension the source is yes. And additionally you see a action here, open source code in VS Code. We'll see how you enable this because this is disabled for all the extension, and how what source control you use and how you can provide access to it. Now if you are interested in reading into it, then here is the Microsoft article which talks about it. This is pull extension source code from GitHub when opening Visual Studio Code from web client. Now how this happened, last year in version 24, Microsoft provided a possibility to open Visual Studio Code project from the web client directly. So if you are not a developer and you don't know how to configure VS Code, you can still, using that functionality, open your Visual Studio Code from the web client directly. And based on the page that you are in or from where you click that action, you were able to set up the app.json file correctly, and all was happening automatically. Now if you don't know about that feature, I have a video available for it. In this video we in detail talked about how you can do that, how you can explore the page, and then how it kind of sets up your VS Code automatically for snapshot debugging and other things. I'll put the link of this video into the description of this video and also on the first pin comment. So if you haven't seen that, go ahead and watch it. It's very useful for function consultants and customers in some cases. Okay, coming to this scenario. Now this extension is saying source yes, but then it does not have the open source in VS Code enable at this moment, and we would like to see how we can do that. So first let me open my source control. Here it is. It's in my GitHub as a public repo, so anybody can download the source code for it and use it if needed. Now having said that, in Visual Studio Code there are certain properties that has been enabled or added which allows you to do that. So let's open my VS Code for this project where I've already cloned this repo. This is the same repo that we saw in source control. Now here what you can do is you can add two new properties. So what you can do is you can add a property called source. This is where you specify where your source is, and inside the source you can specify two properties. One is repository URL, repo URL, where is your source code, and then second is the commit ID, for which commit you would like to attach this particular version of your extension. Now currently the version of this extension is 1.0.0.0, and I would like to set the repo URL to my GitHub URL. So what I'll do is I'll copy this and I'll paste it here. Okay, and then at the end I'll add .git. Second, I would like to attach the commit ID. Now for the commit ID, you can always check the commit ID here, or you can see how many commits I have done on this, which shows you different commits. Now if I have to copy this commit, I should be able to copy this commit from here, which then copies that in my clipboard, which I can then paste it here. Having said these, as I have said these two properties, when I publish this extension, let's do that. Let me change this to 1, do a build. So now my version 1.0.0.1 is available. Now I can go and do an upload extension. I should be able to drag it. So let me just drag it from here, 1.0.0.1, and this should get updated here. So as soon as I publish this, you will notice that for this version, which is 1.0.0.1, I'll be able to see the open source code and VS Code. Now the source property is used to provide the URL of the source control where the source code of the project can be found, and the commit ID of the source code for the current version of the project. So as you are updating the versions, you are surely making commits to your source control, and as you are making commits, you will be able to get the new commit ID as that's happening. Now once you provide that, your VS Code will store those properties, and you will be able to utilize those, or your customers will be able to utilize those to get the source code of it. But let's test it out with different scenarios, not just the GitHub, because let's put it this way very simply. This is a public repo at this point on my GitHub, so anyone can access it. And for sure, either as an organization I'm using GitHub, I'll not keep my customer code as public. It'll be set to private with certain people having access, including my team and the customer team. The other option is that I might be using DevOps rather than using GitHub. Can I give this kind of access to my DevOps? So we'll have to check both, because yes, you can add your customers to DevOps and then give them access. But before doing that, let me close this, and as this property is set, I would like to clone this and see what happens. Okay, so I've closed the folder. It's empty right now, and as it's taking a lot of time, even if it's a pretty small extension, it's taking a lot of time to get completed, done. So now if you see on version 1.0.0.0, it says yes, but the open source code is disabled, and on 1.0.0.1 I can do an open source in VS Code. Now as I click onto this open source in VS Code, it'll ask me a permission to open Visual Studio Code. As I click on open, it'll pop up my VS Code and ask me to either open the repo if I have it locally, or do I would like to clone the repo from GitHub to my local VS Code. When I say clone, it'll ask me where I would like to save it. I select the folder, it starts cloning the repo, and yes, boom. The source code of that extension is now available on my local system. Now here it is asking me what I would like to do. Because I have cloned it, do I want to create a new branch? Do I would like to stay on that branch where I'm in, which is main? I'm looking to point to the original branch on the remote or on the local that I have. So you can choose any options at this point, right? So let's say create a new branch from, and I would say main, and I'll call this as test. So as you can see, this has been cloned and my app.json is here, and now I get everything, which is the version 1.0.0.0 is coming because it is cloning from my GitHub. So let me go back to my GitHub. Okay, here. Now if you look at it on this particular version, my app.json still points to 1.0.0. So it exactly cloned this version into my local system based on the commit ID. So you also need to make sure that whenever you are cloning it, you always clone to the right commit ID that you have made on your system. Okay, so here I should have cloned this where I have these properties. Now, as we said, that this is when I have my source control within GitHub, which is truly not correct for a customer code. So let's try it out with a Azure DevOps account. So let me find it out. Here is one of my learning library that I'm using. So I'll just copy this and I'll paste it here. So it should point to mine. Okay. And then what it is saying, it doesn't match to it, which is odd. Let me see. Okay, this is my ID, so let me paste it in here as it is, and then I need my commit ID, so I can come here, go and check my commit ID. So this is my commit ID here, EC. I can just copy from here and paste that here. Now remember, this is just for the demo, so I'm just taking an example from somewhere else and pasting it here. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to increase this to 2 and doing a build. Now the package is ready. Let me go to my environment and upload extension. Now in this window, I can do the 2, and this time the version 2 is actually pointing to my DevOps, Azure DevOps, not to my public Git. Now remember, in my Azure DevOps, assuming I have given permission surely to my customers to access their source code, so they have access to it. Now on my machine, I already have the DevOps credential saved, so that'll not be the right platform to check it. So what we'll do is we'll go into a VM and see once the version 2 is released. So I'm going here, going into the environment, and let's see what happens from here, because assuming this is client environment where I don't have control over it, so can I still download the source code from here? Because this is the environment where the code is not accessible to public, no one can access it, only people who have access to that DevOps repo can access this window. Okay, coming down to the list. Okay, and let me do a publisher change. Okay, so the version 2 is still updating, I guess. Okay, while this is happening, let's see what are the changes are there on this window. On this window, when you click on an extension, you will also notice that it have the resource protection policies defined on your extension. So you don't have to go and check every time by saying that is it the download source is available or not, which is an older action here to download the source. which allows you to download the zip file of the extension, and that is derived by the policies, resource exposure policies that you define on your extension. So now these three policies, resource exposure policy that you define on your extension, which include allow debugging, allow downloading source, and including source in symbol file, all these properties are also available on this screen, that it is allow debugging or not, can you download the source code or not, and does source code in symbol download available. In the same way, the source control detail, if you have added in your extension, will also be visible on the extension management page for customers and users to see that where this repo is and how or which commit ID this is attached to. So hopefully this is over. Let me just check. Okay, yeah, the version 2 is connected. Now if I look at it, it points to, still point to my GitHub, which is off. The version 2 should not point there, but let's see. Okay, extension management, publisher. Okay, it's still pointing to this, which is a little bit off because this should not. I have saved it and then I have created version 2, so it should point to this. Okay, let me try to clone this from here. Okay, open source in VS Code, allowing this. Okay, clone repo, and let me do it on desktop, select folder. Now if you look at it, it's actually pointing to dev.azure.com, and now because if I have added user or my customer administrator, I have access to my DevOps, they can surely come in and sign in here. So I can do here, provide my credential, hopefully that's correct. Okay, okay, MFA, let me approve my MFA. Okay, and if my customer have access to my DevOps, I'm hoping that they will be able to download the source code from my DevOps. And as you can see, the local repo that I have, which have nothing at this moment, is already downloaded here, and it's matching to the code that is available on my Azure DevOps. So having said that, there are these are the changes that are listed on the new feature that's available with Business Central, that you give access to your source code to your customers, either using a public repo like GitHub, which doesn't make sense in real world, but if you're using Azure DevOps and you have provided access to your customer source code to customers, they don't have to reach out to you if they would like to see the source code. Now, I think it's a great addition to the product because it removes a layer of dependency where a customer has to reach out to me wherever they need the source code, but it also adds one extra layer of step that whenever I'm making a new version for my customer extension and updating the version tag, I also update the commit ID, which is associated with the latest change that happens, so that the user always gets the latest code for the extension whenever they click on download source or open source in VS Code from Business Central. Do you think that download source code was the same thing like opening source code in VS Code? I doubt that, because there's certain limitation to download source code. It doesn't extract in a readable format, and then you have to manually manage it. I think it's a great addition that'll help our customers to do that. I am still interested to understand how many of you think that for PTEs we as partners or developers own the code rather than customer owning the code. So let me know into the comment section, what do you feel about it, that who owns the code when it is a PDE? And I'm specifically talking about pertinent extensions that are built. At this point, you know the drill. If you like like what you saw, hit the like button. If you think this is something that your friends and colleagues and people in community should know about, then share this video on social media. And if you haven't, then please do subscribe to the channel. We'll keep doing whatever we are doing, and your feedbacks and suggestions are also and always welcome. So let me know into the comments, what do you think about it. I'll see you sooner than later into the next video. Till then, keep learning and keep sharing whatever you're learning. Thank you and have a nice day.